Even though a reference geometry cannot be edited in the current file, we can change the way it looks. You see, when you reference a drawing, all of the layers are included in the reference, and making changes to the layer properties is fair game. In this lesson, we're going to change the visual properties of a reference geometry. Let's say that I need to create an exhibit to take to a board meeting, and this exhibit represents a proposed property development that I've been working on. I'd like to create this exhibit from externally referenced files. That way, if the files change, I don't have to worry about recreating my exhibit. I'll start by creating a new drawing. I'll use the ACAD template and I'll click Open. This is a civil engineering example, so I'm going to change the units. I'll open the application menu, come down to Drawing Utilities, and I'll select Unit. And I'll change the insertion scale to feet. The reason why the insertion scale is so important is because when you reference a drawing, that drawing will look to the insertion scale to know if it needs to be resized. The drawings that I'll be referencing have an insertion scale set to feet, so I'm going to make sure that my exhibit is also set to feet. I'll click OK when finished, and I'll save this drawing. I'll save it inside the exercise files folder, within the linking DWG directory, and I'll call this 03 exhibit. Let's take a quick look at the layers. Since this drawing was created from an empty template, we only have one layer, layer 0. I'd like to start by referencing the drawing that represents a vacant lot. This is a drawing that I received from a surveyor. To make that reference, I'll click the Insert tab. I'll come down to the Reference panel and I'll click Attach. I will then select this drawing, 03 Existing Conditions, and I'll click Open. I will then make sure that all of these boxes are unchecked. I'll change the path type to Relative, and I'll click OK. Now that geometry has been referenced into the drawing, the problem is it didn't pop up where I happened to be looking. I'm going to double click the wheel on my mouse to do a zoom extents. First things first, whenever we reference geometry, AutoCAD will screen it by 50%. It does this as a courtesy. That way, it's easy to tell the difference between geometry that's being referenced and geometry that exists in the local file. To change the external reference fading, we can open the Reference panel and you can drag the fading slider left and right. You can also enter a new screening value right here. To turn the feature off completely, you can click this toggle. I'm going to turn it off, that way the geometry appears much brighter on screen. Let's open up the Layer Properties Manager and take a look at the layers. As you can see, all of the referenced layers have come along for the ride, and each reference layer uses the file name as a prefix. Let's move out for a second. Even though I can't edit this geometry from here, since all of the layers are in this drawing, I can turn things on and off. I can adjust the line types of these drawings. I can also change their colors. As an example, I'll select the first reference layer, and then I'll hold my Shift key and select the last one. Now that they're all selected, I will click the color property. I will set all of the layers to be white. Let me mention that the change that I made does not affect the original file at all. It only affects the way that drawing is displayed in my current file. I like to make one more change. I really don't need this existing text to be displayed in the exhibit. One way I can quickly turn that off is by going to the Home tab, and in the Layers panel I'll click the Layer Off button. I will then select an object on the layer I'd like to turn off, and I can hide that layer from display without even knowing the layer's name. When I'm finished, I'll press Escape. Alright, let's reference the drawing that contains the proposed lot geometry. I'll go back to the Insert tab and click Attach, and I'll select this drawing, 03 Prop Sub, and I'll click Open. I'll make sure that all of these boxes are unchecked, and this time I'd like to change the path type. I'll select Full Path, I'll click OK when finished, and now my proposed geometry is visible on screen. Let's go back to the Layer Properties Manager. As you can see, I have several new layers in this file. Since the file name is incorporated into the layer names, these layers are nicely grouped inside the manager. I'm going to move back out. We'll let this collapse and we'll look at some of the other display options that we have. I'll start by selecting the Existing Conditions reference, and then in the Contextual Ribbon tab, I'll choose External References. This brings up the External References palette where I can manage my referenced files. Right here I can see the file names of the two drawings that I'm linked to. If I drag the slider left and right, we can see information about those files. To change some of that information, we can select the file from the list and then any of the values that are not grayed out. We can adjust down here below. As you can see, the existing conditions drawing is using a relative path, and if I select Propose Sub, we can see what a full path looks like. If you'd like to hide the display of your reference geometry, we could go into the Layer Manager and turn off all of the associated layers. A quicker way would be to right-click the file name in the XREF Manager and select Unload. This removes the geometry from the file while maintaining the reference. So if I ever want to bring that geometry back, I can right-click the file name and choose Reload. To remove a reference from a drawing, right-click the file name and select Detach. Now I'd like to keep this geometry, so I'm going to move my cursor in the model space, and I'll press Ctrl Z to bring it back. Sometimes it may be tempting to remove a reference by selecting it and pressing the Delete key. When I do that, watch the manager. Notice the shield and the exclamation point. Anytime you see a status of unreferenced, it means that the external reference has been erased from the file. Now, if this file was in a saved state, there's really no coming back from that, other than right-clicking, selecting Detach, and then reattaching the file. Since I have not saved the drawing since that change, I'm going to press Ctrl Z to bring back the reference. When I'm finished, I'll click the X to close the Reference Manager. At this point, I will save the drawing because it contains both of my references, and it's now ready to be printed and taken to the meeting. So when it comes to reference drawings, the geometry isn't quite as static as you may think. Using layer settings and the External References Manager, we have complete control over the display of referenced files.